They didn't understand how much that hurt them later on in their career.
A lot of these younger people aren't doing that.
That's killing people. That's not helping people.
To me, it's almost criminal talking about this stuff to people because you're giving them a direction. A lot of these young people aren't going to be looking these things up.
I feel mental health is the worst. Dude, come on, man. Just be mentally tough. Just push through it, you know?
Oh, testosterone's really good. Let me juice up.
You say we don't want to be around those people, but nobody's there. Very few people are there to help.
The Walgreens was filling unneeded prescriptions.
So my thing is, why should I care now?
Who's making medical decisions instead of my doctor?
You know, writing prescriptions, selling their medications, they were abusing the system, right? We as individuals look to the government to be able to feel like, hey, can we trust the information coming?
You're admitting to lying because you thought it was in the best interest of the overall. I get it, that's fine, but like, let's not pretend that's not the case all the time.
The problem is most of the time there's always an agenda.
Absolutely.
It's not allowed anywhere else in the world, but in the United States, we allow it like crazy. The government, America wants to redefine what it means to be obese. Specifically, what they want to do is readjust the old BMI index that used to be out, right?
Well, that's a start.
Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, it's something that, you know, has been outdated or illogical for years. I mean, it has kind of a basis, but let's be honest, especially for men, it really didn't have. If you're over 6 feet tall, he has any mass to him whatsoever, it's going to show up that he's automatically obese. I remember when I was young, 18 years old, the military recruiters trying to talk to me and have me come in. I was sick, a little over 6'1", 190 pounds. They're like, oh, you're going to have to lose weight. Just talking to me on the phone. I'd show up, with a 22-inch neck, and they're like, oh, no, you're fine. It's one of those things where it doesn't mean a whole lot, right? And so I think looking at it, I remember how many girls I used to know that were real skinny, but it's zero muscle mass to them. 35% body fat, it's like technically on that scale, they're obese and they're real skinny, For you guys being in sports, right, and then having that kind of thing, there's a difference. Even guy athletes that are heavyweight athletes, Frank. I mean, there are guys that you look at in wrestling. I remember wrestling. You get guys that were 195. There was a huge difference between 195 and being in shape and 195 tub of goo. There's a huge difference. How do you think that we should be looking at, or even kind of contemplate what is considered to be obese or not obese, or what do you guys think of that?
Well, I think an arbitrary number is silly because it doesn't really take all things into account. To me, I think measures of health, there's grip strength, waist circumference, body fat percentage, VO2 max, blood pressure. I would like to look at those indications of somebody and judge your health way faster than I'm worried about what your BMI is. It's like I think BMI, when I did it last time, I should, at my height, weigh 214 pounds. I haven't weighed that since I was a freshman in high school.
Or birth.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, according to them, I'm grossly obese and I'm under 10% body fat. Yeah. So it's just not a good indicator. And then if the tool that we're trying to measure is not accurate and not really dependable, then it doesn't let people guide the right way. Because then you have people sitting there going things the wrong way. I hate when I say, oh, I got to lose weight. And what are you doing? I'm going to just not eat. I'm like, what? Yeah. You're going to starve yourself? Like, no, hold on, stop. That's not the way to do this, But on paper, they're like, well, look, I lost 20 pounds. I'm like, yeah, you lost like 15 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat, maybe. You're actually worse off than you were 20 pounds ago.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation in that, right? You were talking about earlier about boxers, some of the people who work for him. George Foreman, great boxer. Yes. Tremendous athlete. Never been in the best shape, right? Except when he was maybe a lot younger.
His second go around, obviously his first go around.
He was a beast.
He weighed 225, but his second go around he weighed in the 250s, 260s. And that's where he stayed because that was best for him. Not trying to lose all that weight and go back to what he was when he was 22 years old, when he was well into his late 30s and early 40s. He found what worked for him. And he actually was a better fighter. He had better stamina later in his career than when he was 225 pounds. All you have to do is go back to the Rumble in the Jungle, and you can see that. And you can see when he beat Michael Moore, that fight was well late into that fight when he knocked him out. So he was much better as a heavier man. And so that, I think that should say something right there about the body dynamics and what's going on. And there's just, again, we've talked about it time and time again, there's so much misinformation out there. So when you get something like the BMI, at one point it told the NBA 3/4 of their players were obese, not taking into account of their body fat. So I have this guy who's 6'7", he's 245 pounds, and he has 8% body fat, and everything else about his blood work and his VO2 max is off the chart good. You're telling him he's obese.
Yeah, well, they don't take into account people Shaq, things like that. He's, famous for being just a ginormous individual, right? And even still, but yet like you said earlier, when people are trying to cut the weight or trying to be healthy, they're losing muscle mass. They're losing, they're going to dehydration state, which is never healthy, which I think was part of the issue with some of the boxers when they're cutting weight, or wrestlers or fighters. To me, it's not I'm all for having a competitive advantage, keeping people a similar weight. But when you take somebody who's naturally a higher weight, or frame is a big part of it, right? Now I get, people always argue, well, there's no such thing as a big skeleton, right? I get that, right? But people do naturally have bigger body masses than other people, more muscle mass than other people. And, just because depending on how somebody's carrying the weight makes a big difference too. You do have different type body shapes, but yeah, just having a blanket, oh, your BMI is this, is it even accurate? And it's not. There's got to be a better way of doing that.
Because people use a measuring stick. Whatever uses a measuring stick is what people are going to adjust to. For example, I see this as a fallacy a lot of people do in their training. 2.25 would be a measuring for my upper body strength. How many times can I press it? Well, then you got guys that just specialize and are really great at benching 2.25, but it's like, well, you kind of actually lost the reality of what this was for. This was supposed to measure, not really be the goal, And I think that what happens when you have something like the BMI, people are going to make that the goal, like they do with all things that measure. And it's like, man, this is horrible, because you can really do things very unhealthy and match it and adjust your BMI. And according to that number and the way that system's set up, you're actually healthier. And we all know it not to be true.
Yeah, exactly. Oprah Winfrey says obesity is a disease and not lifestyle choices and things of that nature. And she's a big proponent for some of these GLP-1s, semaglutide and things like that. My issue with Oprah or other people that are pushing these GLP-1s, right? They are not miracle drugs. They don't make the weight just fall off your body, right? Yeah, they help. They help curb appetites. They certainly can. And there's different ones that can do a few different things. They can help, speed up your metabolism. But for those individuals that aren't realizing that these are lifestyle modification tools, right? Like utilizing to actually get active, go to the gym, which, the gym, we can talk about that too in a little bit. That's another conversation, but just getting active, finding a trainer, or just walking around the block, starting somewhere. I think it's a crutch. And I think that people pushing these medications as the end all, the be all, to me is misinformation. And celebrities shouldn't be offering that kind of stuff. How do you guys feel about it?
At the end of the day, it's about making money. And I don't like celebrity pitchmen. You're telling me I need to do this to look like you, but what is your agenda with this? How am I going to really get there? What's the science behind it? What's really behind it? You're telling me this because it worked for you, but they're paying you a boatload of money to tell me this. And I don't know if this is effective for me. I don't know if it can be effective for me. Have I done blood work? Have I seen a physician and say, hey, you know what? Your cholesterol high, or this is higher, that's low, and you need to raise these levels here. Have I got with a trainer that actually knows what they're doing? Mm-hmm. Does this trainer, do they have a degree, or they have a 6-week certification? Because there's a vast difference between the two.
Absolutely.
I think being realistic with people too is, again, transparency. I'm a believer in the tirzepatide and semaglutide. I think that how I tell people though is it makes you make decisions easier. It's not going to just if you sit there and take this, okay, take this injection and now eat whatever the fuck you want, don't work out and you'll lose weight. It's like, well, yeah, you will, but now you're losing muscle and there's all kinds of other issues that go along with that. I'm like, but you know what? It's hard to go ahead and make the right decisions. You're going to the gym, you're trying to make decisions to eat right, the amount of food you eat. I'm like, you know what? This will help give you assistance. This will help support to where now you're not so like, I don't want to eat this, I want to eat this. It's like, well, here, if you take this injection, it'll actually make those decisions, that the right decisions that you should be making, make them easier. I think when it's used in that context, it's great. It's same with me, like a pain medication or a kratom. If someone sits there, hey, my leg hurts, I'm going to just take a pain medication, I'm going to lay home in bed. I'm like, You're like, but, I'm going to take pain medication so I can go to rehab and work on my rehabilitation and work on my injuries. I'm like, that's a good idea, because it probably would have hurt too bad to go without it. So now you have a fine balance of like, okay, I'm doing this, but there's a means to go ahead as an assistance, as a tool, and put it in the right part. Whereas it's not just a crutch. And I think that's the most important part about it, is just being more clear on what those drugs are for. They're for assistance. They're tools to make a healthy lifestyle easier. And also too, you get results, I think, faster, which I think helps motivate people. You sit there and go, if you're doing the right things, you'll see nothing worse than dieting for 4 weeks. And you look in the mirror and you're like, I've lost a pound.
Yeah.
What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like that could be discouraging. So again, I like them as so far as not miracle drugs, not a wonder drug, not a handicap where it's like, well, now I get to fucking eat cake at night. I'm like, Well, no, buddy, that's stupid because you don't want to be on this forever. It's too expensive to begin with. But if you wanted to go ahead and have a kickstart and assistance, this will make your job easier and you'll be able to leverage it better. That's what I think should be how they be kept in that, criteria and explained that way.
No, exactly. As I said earlier, and you said, it's a tool to help with the lifestyle modification. It's similar to when people are getting those gastric bypass with the sleeves, right. And people lose all kinds of weight. They ate whatever they want. And what happened is their stomach would expand again. Yeah. They'd end up gaining the weight all back every time. As a tool, when I use different peptides or the GLP-1s, for me, it was changing some of the mental habits. I wouldn't be hungry, but yet just out of pure habit, I would get up 15, 20 times a day and go to the refrigerator and go to the pantry. I wouldn't grab anything. And I remember specifically standing in there going,
what?
Why am I up? I'm not hungry. And once I realized this was just habit forming for me, and I wasn't hungry, that allowed me to and when I was hungry, it was, what am I going to eat? What is going to be a healthier choice? Having more proteins, having less carbohydrates, having zero sugars, things like that made it easier for me to drop a significant amount of weights. And then when I was able to get off the GLP-1s, don't gain back the weight because I'm just...
Well, now you got momentum and you create healthy habits. And so it helped me. The same. My biggest issue is I overeat. I used to be a voracious overeater. And no matter what, we could fucking cook the healthiest meal in the world. I'm still eating 10,000 calories. You know what I mean? Like, that's
everything.
Yeah, it's like, I'm eating chicken and rice. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm eating fucking 3 chickens and all that.
But there's a difference. Yes, we're eating tons of calories and tons of food, but there is a difference in what types. You can have the calories, but just because you're having calories doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It also has to do with your activity level too.
True, but again, my problem was excessive eating. And again, you can have your macros and everything right. If you're still excessively eating, in a caloric surplus, you're going to put weight on. And so to me, the tirzepatide helped kill that to where eating now is actually a conscious thought, not a overdriven, just dry, where I'm like, my wife would tell me Frank, do you really want a third helping? And almost like get into a fight. Like people don't get between me and a plate of food, Then for 3 or 4 months, I was able to control what I ate. Once I got off the tirzepatide, I now have a habit of I know how to eat just one plate of food. I know how to just have one serving. Whereas before, to try to do that, I was battling so many other things in my head that I was just a lot of success, a lot of failures. So I use it as a tool to help, which then, like you said, I think it puts momentum into your body so that you're able to go ahead and now all these healthy habits become easier to implement.
So this is a pretty good one. President Trump wants to remove the Board of Education out of women's health, right? Because of all the trans issues, which could remove women's sports in general, right? Frank, I know I've talked to you at length, specifically about your daughter, right? In the fights and MMAs. And there was fights. Actually, we were talking earlier about the Tyson fight, right? Before the Tyson fight, there was a female fight, right? Which to me was the most brutal fight of the night. One of the best fights I've ever seen. And I think in women's sports, it kind of falls into 2 categories for me, right? You get the kind of you get the more brutal sports, the MMA and the boxing and things like that, which I find to be much more physical. I think they have almost a chip on the shoulder where they're trying to prove that they belong here, right?
Yes.
And then you get some other sports, and I'll probably get some hate for this. Like you get the WNBA, which you watch, and to me, it's worse than watching college basketball or high school basketball is what it kind of looks like. It just doesn't flow as well as some of the other sports. Famously, there was a women's soccer league that was talking, their championship team was talking great, and they got beat by a men's high school team.
It was a 14-year-old team.
You're right. It was a 14-year-old team.
The boys are 14 under.
14, and it was 5-0. They just destroyed them. So I think there is a different level of athleticism just genetically between men and women. I forgot who made the joke. It might have even been Trump talking about starting a WNBA league and getting LeBron James to become transvestite, right? And he's going to dominate it for years. And it's absolutely
Chris Rock. It was one of the comedians said that. He goes, "Let me go get LeBron James, David Chappelle."
That's what it was. Yeah, and it's absolutely true.
800 points.
Yeah, I mean, and but you think about that, and to me, I'm all for female sports, right? We all have daughters, we have nieces. We want to encourage them to be able to do what they want, right? Now, I'm not going to buy, club seats at the WNBA, or if they had a female baseball league, I'm not going to do that. But I don't think the league should ever be mixed together. I don't think that female athletes, as good as they are, can ever compete against the male athletes, just genetic levels. And I know some people encourage them to do that. And, if that's their thing, go for it. But if you have trans individuals that are trying to compete, I think it's an unfair advantage.
Well, we have categories for a reason. Categories allow other people who have lesser abilities to be able to compete. Think about it. We have weight classes.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I can't identify as a 135 pounder. If I could, I'm the UFC champ right now. You know what I mean? Like, no problem. You know what I mean? Like, I can go and have a beer, drink. You know what I mean? Like, and changing my weight would probably be less of a discrepancy of a mental shift than trying to change what my sex is. And so we have these categories, so that allows people to go and compete in sports, to be able to compete against level competition, have fun. You know what I mean? So that's why there's a women's side, because you can't compete with the men. If they could, look, there's $1 billion industry. If there was a woman who could kick farther than a man, you don't think she'd be on an NFL team? You know what I mean? Like, you think they're like, oh, you're a girl, we don't want you to play. Trust me, if she was faster, stronger, could throw farther, hit harder, they're going to hire her.
So let me give this example. Ron, you answer this for me. So you get somebody even like Muhammad Ali's daughter, boxer.
Right.
Beast of a woman.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to fight her, right?
Right.
But you put her in a ring with another professional athlete, boxer, her weight class, male. She's not going to survive.
No, she's not going to survive that. Not at all. But in this whole, it's so politicized as well with this, because now if you look at the past Olympics, you had a cisgender fighter who was a female.
Mm-hmm.
She was misrepresented as a transgender fighter, and she got so much hate.
Yeah.
Now, but if you look at the landscape of it, the NCAA has had rules in place since 2008.
Mm-hmm.
The Olympics had since 2011 about transgender athletes.
Mm-hmm.
None of them have ever done anything. You can't name one woman was a trans athlete that has done anything in those sports. If you look at it right now, there's over 226,000 female athletes in division in NCAA sports.
Mm-hmm.
You have actually 8 that are transgender, outside of the women's swimmer at Penn. And we saw a year's turnaround with that, where she was kind of a nondescript male swimmer.
I don't think he made in top 400.
Yeah. And then obviously we know there's differences, especially within that year. But when you go back to fighting, Fallon Fox was a female fighter.
Mm-hmm.
She had been a woman for 6 years prior to starting into. So it wasn't like it was like, hey, I'm getting beat up by men, I'm going to change my gender and compete. Whatever she had going on in her life, she decided to make that transition. She happened to be a fighter. Now, I had got news because I had a female fighter that was supposed to fight in that tournament that she was in.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard a rumor that there might be a trans athlete. So I start emailing doctors who perform these surgeries, like, what are we getting into? And the data was mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Some said, depending on what the testosterone levels are, how long she's been a woman. And I had no knowledge of actually even who it was and how long any of that was. So I was like, well, what am I putting my athlete into? And then how it played out, my athlete got hurt, didn't end up competing in that tournament. That tournament went on. Fallon Fox beat up what we call cans. There was a lot of women who weren't that good. It was set up for her, but the only woman she really faced that was good was Ashley Evans Smith, who ran right through her, who ended up coming into the UFC. So where does it lie of what's going to go on? How are we going to determine how this plays out? And I think at the end of the day, science is going to play this out on setting limitations of testosterone levels. We had a female 400-meter champion from South Africa. Her name escapes me. She has a testicle. She was naturally born with a testicle. She is a female. She can give birth, but her testosterone levels were high. They wanted her to take medication to suppress it. The medication made her sick. Mm-hmm. So she says, I'm not taking that. Yeah. And this is what God gave me. This is how I'm going to perform. Then they banned her. Where do we go with this?
Yeah, that's a rare example. I mean, that really a hermaphrodite type of example, that is a rarity, and most of the time when you're talking about the reverse, if you get a female transgender trying to get into the male sport, they'll never be able to compete. Mm-hmm. And so it typically, when these things all come up, it's always the male. And you know what? And your example of the fighter is truly a rare one, because most of the time you get a mediocre male athlete that isn't performing, and they, suddenly switch sports to be, and they want to compete immediately. And most of them, haven't done any type of gender reassignment surgery or other stuff. They're just identifying that.
Yeah, I know. I think that with me, if you still have the Frank and beans attached, obviously you cannot compete. But what happens if at 16 you had gender reassignment surgery and you find yourself 24 now and it's been 8 years? What is your body dynamics like now? And does it give you a huge advantage or doesn't it give you a huge? Where are we at with that? We just seen with the San Jose State volleyball player. There was lawsuits going on by teammates. But when you look at her statistically, it's like she was like, meh. But obviously, I have a daughter. I don't want her competing with men. I mean, I've sparred women before in the gym, so I understand the dynamics between the two. And obviously, they're not going to be able to compete. I remember they were talking about Ronda Rousey being able to beat 135-pound men. I'm like, no.
If right now I stop taking everything in my body and you loaded me up with estrogen, my bones are still going to be the same. Right. There's no woman who's going to be able to compete with me in thickness, muscle density. Am I going to lose a lot? Well, yeah. But there's lung capacity, heart size. There's things that I've gained from being a male for so long that, like, I'm not going to lose that. There's always going to be that advantage.
And that's kind of the point.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So let me ask you guys this. This is kind of the last topic to discuss for today is the difference between being fit for longevity compared to just being skinny or just having a small frame. You know, a lot of times in what's out there, everybody's saying, oh, are you thin, right? And that makes you healthy, which isn't necessarily
true.
Exactly, right? And
it's a half truth.
You know, and so we were talking about earlier, just because somebody is bigger, you know, you get these power lifters, right? They are not shredded, but these guys are just massively strong and able to do things. What do you find the difference between truly being fit, really what the definition of fit is, and for longevity compared to just being the standard, are you skinny type of
I want to know your body fat dynamics, you know, because you can be skinny with a high body fat, and that means your cholesterol could be high and other issues going on. So you're not really fit. You can obviously be thicker, and your blood work says that you're really good. You're in really good ranges to live a long, healthy life. So that's kind of where I would go with, are you fit? What does my blood work say? What do I need to work on? What do I need to take out, or what do I need to add to my diet to give me that longevity that I'm looking for? What's my family dynamics? Do we have heart issues in my family? Do we have high blood pressure issues in my family? So those things that I can have control over on how I control my diet and how I do the things. So I don't necessarily look at the scale.
So when you get people though that are training with you, right, coming in, you might get guys. You ever find guys that look like they're in pretty good shape?
Oh yeah.
And they gas out right away.
It's very common in our industry. And I think that's the misconception, especially with social media is now. A guy has a six pack and like, oh, he's in shape. I'm like, no, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm not saying he can't be in shape, but the absence of body fat and being ripped doesn't necessarily mean what we consider being in shape. To me, I think I've used 3 different modalities of how I work, you know, when I judge myself or others off of, you know, strength, mobility, and then, you know, cardiovascular health. If you can't go for a walk for 30 minutes, then we have some serious issues. You know? Right. I have friends that like, you know, that train, they look great. And I'm like, you know, we're sitting there and walking, like we walk upstairs. I'm like, hey, are you okay, man? Like, you know, I've done that to myself. I've been there where I'm like, you know, lifting heavy, not really doing cardio or sparring. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I look good. But I even make that joke. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm in bodybuilder shape right now. You know what I mean? I look the part, but I'm not in shape, you know, because I know that cardiovascularly, you know, and mobility wise, I'm suffering in those areas.
You know, it was funny when I first came to Las Vegas, my sons joined a Taekwondo studio. Did it for them just to get active and have some fun. They were small. And so the guy who was putting on the studio there, he wanted to get an adult class going. So I was like, well, you know, it sounds pretty interesting. I'll come out. And I got a bunch of guys that I knew, and some of the employees come out and, you know, had them start doing this. And it was almost hilarious. You think Taekwondo's, you know, make fun of it all you want, but just doing the basic cardio moves of trying to do moves down the mat, of how many of these guys were passing out within 10 or 15 minutes just from the lack of movement that they had in this sedentary lifestyle. And these were skinny individuals to heavy individuals. And it was all the same. They all just couldn't breathe. They didn't know how to do anything. And so it was like, just how we view who's in shape. It has nothing to do with real size. I mean, obviously, you know, if somebody's obese or fat or just, you know, but one thing, but if they look like they're in shape and they can't have, like you said, walk up a flight of stairs or walk for 30 minutes, that to me is usually a sign that how bad or what we're really looking at is in shape.
Yeah, and actually we live in such a microwave society. We want everything quick. And so what happens is we work from home. We don't go outside. Or if we do go to the office, we take the elevator or escalator instead of walking up the stairs. And I tell people to start there. You want to get fit? If you work in a 4-story building, take the stairs. On your lunch break, go for a walk. Start slow. Sometimes, especially with men, our ego gets the best of us, and we try to think of our 18-year-old selves. I'm going to go in the gym, and I'm going to go lift at 2.25, and I'm going to do all these things, and you go so hard that you're so sore that it's miserable, and you don't want to do that again.
You know, I think it even stems earlier than that. I remember as a kid, we played outside at all times, right? You can't, you were outside and we would go everywhere. And when the street lights came on, you get your ass inside, exactly. And I get here in Vegas, it's hot in the summertime. I'm not going to lie. It's not, but the amount of people, when you come outside, there are no kids outside playing, right? I got a basketball court in front of my house and my sons are out there all the time and they're the only ones in the neighborhood outside playing.
But that's still relatively new for Vegas because my parents moved out here when I was 17. Mm-hmm. And I was used to playing pickup games in California, going to the beach and other places. We still went outside and played, even if it was 110. We just drank water or Gatorade and played. But we give our kids gadgets now, so they don't go outside.
They play on their iPads.
They play on their iPad.
Computer games.
The funny thing about that, one thing they can do, though, better than maybe we did, is they can shoot because of all the first-person shooter game. I took a kid shooting who had never been shooting before, and I was like, how did you know how to do that? He's like, all the first-person shooter games. You know how to change all the magazines. I was like, wow, you got to be kidding me with that. But we give them gadgets. We pacify them like, here's your iPad. Here's, the PS5. Go play. Leave me alone. And we don't have them outside. And if we do have them outside, I used to tease my daughter about this. I used to ride my bike everywhere all over Los Angeles. Half the time, my parents didn't know where I was at. But for my daughter to go outside and do those same things, she had to wear a helmet. She had to have a GPS on her. One of the parents had to be watching her.
Yeah, well, I made that same joke too. Growing up in Southern California, we literally ride our bikes across the entire city to go to the movies. Parents had no idea where we're at. I don't trust my kids to go outside the neighborhood. It's not that I don't trust my kids. I just don't want things to happen outside my own street.
Right. But you know what? It's always happened. We just didn't know about it in real time.
True.
If you go back and look at all the unsolved
mysteries. It actually happens less now.
Yeah.
It's actually safer now.
The unsolved mysteries, they were always snatching kids. Mm-hmm. We just didn't know about it in real time. Now we know about it in real time.
If someone kid gets snatched up in Miami right now, we're all going to know about it.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes when it's done. Back 20 years ago, we didn't. This news network has completely changed our perspective of reality.
Yeah.
And it is safer. It's funny. I'm victims of it too. I'm as guilty as everybody here. My children don't have nowhere near the freedom I had growing up because I'm so, being paranoid, and I had to realize like, shit, stay in this circle, stay here. I just pulled it out the other day I had GPS trackers sewn into belts before, obviously my kids were before the iPhone. Bella, was born in 2003. So I remember, taking her to Disneyland stuff. I had to put a belt underneath of her clothing that was buckled that had a GPS that I could go ahead and look up on the laptop and see where she was. And I just, it had like, a 48-hour charge on or something. People use it for their, put in employees' cars, see where their employees are and stuff, where they're moving and stuff. I was like, I'm going to use that for my kids. That's how.
I just have my kids on those human leashes,
you're creating serial killers.
Exactly.
So it's kind of, it's like, I want to get mad, like, society that we give our kids, they have like template, the phones and the gadgets, they stay indoors. But like, I feel like as parents, I agree with you. I think I'm just as guilty of being overprotective. It's like, dude, like the boogeyman was always there. In fact, there's less of them now. Like, sometimes like I think we helicopter too much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Ron, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Do you have if you want to give out your social handles for people to follow you or talk to you about training, if they have any specific questions, you're welcome to.
They can find me on Instagram at Ron Frazier 22 or TikTok PhD Athletics, or my old stomping grounds where I've been since 2007, Extreme Couture, Randy Couture's spot. I'm always there.
I appreciate that. And as always, Frank, thank you very much for joining us. Talk more about your journey and health and everything as we progress. Thank you guys very much for joining us today. Hey guys, that was a great episode. Thank you very much for joining us. If you guys want any more information, make sure to give Ron or Frank a follow. As always, if you like what you heard here today, make sure you give us a like and follow. Hit the subscribe button below, and we'll see you next time.